Hi, my name is Dana Bruns, and I am an instructional technology specialist with Jackson R2 Schools. And today I'm going to be doing a presentation about keeping students engaged when you're teaching online. A lot of these techniques will also work for those of you who are teaching face-to-face, but the title of this presentation is Let's Get Engaged Online and in Person. So the bit.ly for this presentation is bit.ly/engagement RSET, and it is case sensitive. So if you want to go ahead and get that entered, then we will go ahead and get started. So at a workshop that was conducted at the College of William and Mary in 2015, they broke down the obstacles, they broke down the obstacles to student engagement into three main areas: social, administrative, and motivational. And they broke down those categories into these subtopics here, like designing your course into a, excuse me. So they broke down those categories into these subtopics, like designing your class in a way that it's built for active learning and passive learning. And even though that was conducted 5 years ago, this blog post by Jennifer Gonzalez on her Cult of Pedagogy podcast and blog basically looks at the way that teaching online should be different from face-to-face teaching and the ways that it should stay the same. And a lot of those things that they found in 2015 in their workshop are exactly the same things that she talks about in her blog post. And we used that as the basis for a lot of our PD this summer, and we were trying to help our teachers prepare for their courses that they're going to be teaching online this school year. So what I'm going to look at are the ways that you want to structure your class to keep teaching the same for teaching online, and the ways that you're going to structure things to make it different. So we're going to talk about what stays the same when you're teaching online, because you really want to have your students engaged no matter if you're teaching face-to-face or teaching online. But the main thing that stays the same is that it's built on relationships. So it's crucial to build relationships between yourself and your students, but you also want to build relationships among your students. You want them to feel like they're a part of something. And that's especially important when you're teaching online, because it's really easy for your students to feel isolated. So I've got linked here a lot of different check-ins and icebreakers and ways that you can build that community among your students. Now this will work if you're face-to-face so that you can get to know your students and build those relationships, but they will also work if you are teaching online. So like this check-in generator that's here, this will just open up to some random questions that you can put up on the board as students come in, or put up on your screen if they are just joining a Zoom. Now they are completely random, so you might not want to use this live. You might want to just find the questions and decide which ones are appropriate and inappropriate, because you have no way of knowing what's going to come up here. Then there are some other ones like these icebreakers where you're going to get some similar questions like, what would you be doing if you weren't here? Where would you be if you weren't here? And why would you be there? What's your favorite pizza topping? Or there are these 5-minute remote connections, and it's a slide deck where all you have to do is pull the slide and put it into your slide deck. And there are some really interesting ones here as well. So one of the ones that I liked, I think I put it in the slide deck. Yeah. So you would have the students, you add this slide to your slide deck, and you have them pull the yellow dot over to where they would want to be for vacation, and the red dot to where they would not want to be. And I don't know about you guys, but after 8 snow days, because that's what we missed in the last 2 weeks, I would definitely pull the yellow dot up here to the beach, and I would definitely say I do not want to vacation in the snow-capped mountains. So those are just some ready-made slides that you can pull in there. And then the last icebreaker that I had here was another one for building connections, and it was some more questions that you could pull in, like what's the most ridiculous thing your parents ever did to embarrass you? So any of those, there are lots of other examples there. I just pulled a couple of them to show you. But then they find someone who slides. So I know you guys have probably all done the icebreaker where you give them a piece of paper and they have to go around the room and they've got to find someone who went on vacation this summer to Disney World or something like that. Find someone who is shorter than you are. And they just have to go around and get to know people and find someone who can sign that space. Well, this was a way that we did the same activity. Where'd it go? So we did this. They had, nope, that's not what it was. Okay, so the last activity on here is the find someone who slides. So this was something that I did with teachers the very first year that our teachers had their Chromebooks, and we were kind of learning how to use those. And I took that find someone who activity, which I'm sure you guys have all done. You've got a piece of paper and you've got to go around and you've got to find someone who has traveled out of the country or find someone who has been on a plane. Instead of putting that on one piece of paper, I put each of those little things on a different slide, and they had to go around and they had to get someone who could put their name there, and they took their own picture and they put it on there. So as you can see, some of them had a good time with that and made some funny faces, but they were going around and they were doing it virtually. So that's something else that you could do. So they were going around, they were doing this in the room, they were together, but you could construct this to do it virtually as well. Okay, so a couple of other activities that I had here. I'm sure you guys have seen different ones of these all over social media during the shutdown. This was a cat check-in. So you make this a Google form and you have them say which one of these cats represents how you're feeling right now. I saw some of these that were kind of funny. They were which stage of Joey. So Joey from Friends, and they had some different expressions of him from the different scenes in the TV series. So which Joey represents how you're feeling right now. This is another activity that I think would be a lot of fun. Just surveying your students so that you can talk to them about their interests. So a lot of us do these surveys at the beginning of the school year so that we can get to know them. But then use some of their favorite songs, the ones that are school appropriate, of course. Use those as you're having that time where they're coming into the Zoom, or use them as they're coming into your classroom as well. Have them do show and tell to share their pets. The memes is the one that I'm really interested in. If you wanted to have them create some memes, there's this activity that's linked here for you. But it's a great way to have them build some relationships between themselves and to share their interests with you. But have them create a meme that shares one of their best character traits or one of their greatest challenges or struggles or something that they think everyone should know about them. And the activity that's linked here has some very common meme photos, like the little baby that's doing, yeah, or some of those the ones that you see over and over again. It makes it a little easier for the students if you scaffold creating memes and have them start with that folder full of all the images, and all they have to do is add the text, and it even has the font in there for them, this meme font that you see over and over again. And it saves them from having to go and find the pictures. It also saves them from finding inappropriate pictures if you scaffold that. And then after they've done this meme activity a couple of times, then you can let them go and find their own pictures. But it's a great creative project. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great way for you to get to know your kids and for them to get to know each other. And they have a lot of fun doing it. Okay, Flipgrid is a great activity for getting to know your students. Sometimes they're a little hesitant to use Flipgrid because they have to record themselves. But if you ask students what they want to be when they grow up now, you're not going to hear doctor or lawyer or teacher. You're going to hear things like social media influencer or TikTok star. So they might as well start practicing by making a video for your class, right? So they can make a video introducing themselves. I think this is a fabulous way for them to start off the year, because then, I don't know about you guys, but I always struggled with learning their names and making sure that I pronounced them correctly, or remembering that Elizabeth wanted to go by Beth. So if you have them introduce themselves on Flipgrid, you always have that to go back to as you're learning how to say their names and what name they prefer to go by. Another fun activity that you can do with Flipgrid is to have them fill out any kind of getting to know you sheet like this. And they fill out a couple of these boxes about themselves, and then they record those on Flipgrid as well as giving you their name. So that way they're not just stuck with, oh my gosh, what do I say when they're trying to introduce themselves? They've got some prompts to go along with that. And then another fun activity that I found just recently on, I think it was on Eric Kurtz's, it was on Eric Kurtz's January, What's New in Google. Somebody had the idea of doing review vocabulary with Flipgrid. So you give the students a word and they have to give the definition of it in their Flipgrid, in their recording, and then they all make their bingo card. And as they listen to it or as you play it, they have to figure out which word is being defined, and then they can cross that off their bingo card as they're going through there. So that's linked down here for you if you're interested in it. Okay, so if we were doing this live, at this point, you guys would be answering this question. Share a method that you have used to get to know your students. And we would be using Pear Deck to do this live. And then everybody's responses would show up anonymously up on the screen. So Pear Deck is a great engagement tool because it keeps all of us on the same slide. So if you guys are following along on my slides, you're able to move ahead, go back and look at something earlier. If we're doing this in Pear Deck, you can't advance the slides until I advance the slides. So Pear Deck gives us a lot of tools for engagement. It gives us tools for formative assessments as well. Like this previous question, your answers show up on the screen, but they show up without your names. So everybody has the chance to contribute. Even those quiet kids in class get the chance to contribute to the class discussion, but their names aren't there, so they don't have that fear of being exposed. This works with a Google slide presentation that you already have. They have these pre-made slides like this one that you can add in there, or you can edit them and add your own questions. It works in the instructor paced mode, but I could also turn you guys loose and let you go ahead and work in the student paced mode. But it's great for formative assessment because I don't know about you, but I would never, if a teacher asked, a question and asked me to put up my fingers from 0 to 5 for how well I understand something, if I looked around the room and saw that everybody else was holding up 5 fingers, there's no way I'm going to hold up 1 finger to say that I don't understand. But if I know that my response is going to be anonymous and I was able to say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you understand? I would be much more willing to put in a 1 if that's really my level of understanding. So I really like Pear Deck for formative assessment. It's a Google Slides add-on and it's free. There is a paid version, but really, I think with the free version, you get everything that you would absolutely need. Okay, so something else that stays the same is communication and expectations. It's super important that you have clear communication, that you establish your routines and stick to them. So if your students are walking into your classroom, they should know that you're going to have your agenda up on the board for today. They should know that you're going to have consistent due dates. You're going to turn things in the same spot. All that needs to be the same online as well. They need to know that you're going to post at a certain time, that things are going to be due at a certain time, that you're going to post everything in Google Classroom or in Canvas or wherever, that you're not going to suddenly just start emailing things or change how you've been doing things. So everything needs to be consistent. Even your naming conventions need to be consistent. So you're going to name your assignments the same way, and that's not going to change. They need to know what to expect, and you need to have online procedures just like you have in your classroom. You need to have research-based practices. That doesn't change just because you're teaching online. You want to have everything, everything based on research, no matter what. You want to use a variety of large group, small group activities. You want to address their individual learning styles. You're going to have some synchronous and asynchronous activities. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really getting tired of those words, but it's true. Some things are going to be done in real time, and you want to save those for things like what we're doing right now, for the interactive things, what we would be doing right now if I could do this live. You've got to build in brain breaks, and this is a real fun one that I found. I think this also came from the Eric Kurtz presentation. This is rock, paper, scissors, and this again gets the kids engaged with each other, but also builds in a brain break. So what they do is they play rock, paper, scissors with each other, and then if you win, you dance for 30 seconds. If you lost, you do the Spider-Man walk for 30 seconds, And if you tied, you crab walk for 30 seconds. And then click anywhere to get to the next set of activities. Oh, if I'm in present mode, I could click anywhere to get to the next set. Okay, so they play rock, paper, scissors again. If you win, you get to jog a victory lap for 30 seconds. If you lose, do 30 seconds of push-ups. And if you tied, you hold this position for 30 seconds. So quick, simple activity. You don't have to do this for very long, but it's going to give you a brain break and it's going to keep your students more engaged in what they're doing. Hyperdocs are one of my absolute favorite ways to keep students engaged, and these will absolutely work whether you are in person or whether you are virtual. These are digital lesson plans that are designed by teachers and given to students. That means that you have fewer lectures and you've got more face-to-face interaction. So it builds in a hyperdoc, it builds in that time for the direct instruction, but it also builds in more time for students to be able to do some exploration virtually on their own of the topic. So hyperdocs are going to be used with Google Docs. They can be used with Google Slides. They can be used with Sheets. But basically, it's going to replace a worksheet, replace a lengthy lecture where the teacher just delivers all the information, but it's going to add inquiry. So this is a tour that's going to take you all the way through it that you guys can go and look at on your own. This is a link to a website. And this is where they encourage you to go ahead and join this website because it's a lot like Teachers Pay Teachers, except that this is all built on free, our favorite four-letter word. What they want you to do is they want you to go here and search for lessons that you can use. Because they're all built on Google, the whole idea is that you find one and that you use it. You file, make a copy, and you adapt it so that it works for you. And then you go ahead and you make one later and you give it back to them. So, okay, so this doesn't exactly meet the standards that you're teaching. Take it, make a copy, change it, use it with your students. Then later on, you just make one from scratch and you bring it back here and you give it to someone else so that they can do the same thing. So let's see, what grade do we want to go with? I was a secondary English teacher, so I'm going to go to secondary and see what we can find here. Okay, well, I wanted to show you some of the samples from that Teachers Give Teachers website, but it was not letting me in and they were taking way too long to load. So hopefully we can find some examples on this website. Yeah, this is an entire hyperdoc full of examples. So let's see what we have here. Maybe this will be a little bit better. I was a secondary English teacher, so I'm going to naturally gravitate towards the ELA examples. Let's see. Story elements. There's a nice general one that should have something here for us. So again, these are all built on Google Documents, Google Docs, or Google Slides, so that you can take them and make a copy. So they're all going to probably be view only. You're going to go to File and make a copy, and then you're going to be able to edit and change them however you need to. So as you go through, there's going to be some information. There's going to be there's going to be a section for Explore. There's going to be an active engagement section. There's going to be an Apply section where you have to apply your new knowledge. And then there's going to be a Share section where the students are going to be asked to come back and share their new knowledge with each other. So sometimes there will be additional sections as well. So if you look at this template, this goes through in a lot more detail for you. These are the different sections that you may see on any different hyperdoc. A lot of times you will see the Engage, which may have a video to hook students. It may have a short reading passage. The Explore section, where they're going to do some exploring on their own. You may give them an article to read. You may give them a video to watch. Something is going to be linked there where it's going to allow them to go and find more information on their own. Explain is going to be the part where you're providing the direct instruction. The Apply is going to be where they apply their new knowledge. Share is going to be where they come back and they're going to share it. Maybe a Padlet, maybe a collaborative Google slide deck, something where they're going to be contributing their knowledge and they're going to be sharing it with each other. You may or may not ask them to reflect on this. You may have a section for extend. This is that question that was always hard for me. What do I do if they already know what I'm trying to teach them? This is where you can build in that section for the students who've already got the knowledge, the standard that you're trying to teach, they already know it. How can they take that information and go beyond the basic standard that you were trying to reach? It's easy to build that in. The other thing that I love about HyperDocs is that it's super easy to differentiate. You can make the HyperDoc look the same for everybody. You can have it built so that the colors and everything are the same no matter what group you're working with. But if you have SPED students, it's super easy to make sure that the article that they're going to, the link is different. So maybe they're going to be going and reading something, but your SPED students are having a video that they're going to be watching instead of reading something. So it's super easy to differentiate for those students. And then the other wonderful thing in this particular section here, it's got a definition of what all those sections stand for and what you're supposed to do in those sections. But here is your own blank template for planning and creating your first HyperDoc. So if you click right here, here is a template, and it's going to have all those sections in there. It's going to tell you what to do in each section, and it's basically going to have everything spelled out for you. All you have to do is add the content. So this is a great document. Again, go to File, make a copy. And if you read through all his pedagogy first on this page, or go back to the tour that's right here, there's a lot of information out there about HyperDocs. And I know I went over this very complex topic very quickly, but it is such a great way for you to get students engaged and such a great way for you to differentiate and provide individualized instruction, because while the students are working, you've got time to go around and work individually one-on-one with each of those students and help them with the spots where they need more individualized instruction, instead of just talking to the whole group at the same time when they're not all at the same place. Okay, authentic learning. That's something that didn't change either. We definitely need to make sure that everything that we're doing is authentic, and we know that giving voice and choice to our students automatically leads to more engagement and more motivation. But how do we do that? So Google Slides is a natural tool for that. They're so adaptable, they're so flexible, and they've got so many different options for us. Thin Slides is one of my favorite ways to use Google Slides because they're quick, they're easy, and it's a way that you can hear from every student in the room in under 5 minutes, as opposed to spending a lot of class time on all of your students making a presentation and then spending even more class time for all of your students to present. This is a quick, easy way for you to whip around the room and hear from everybody. So what is a thin slide? It's one slide with one picture and one word. And the idea behind this is you give your entire class this template, all right? This is the instruction slide. You create a collaborative slide deck, and a lot of teachers will number their students. So they've already got their number. Well, they have their numbered slide. So it's a lot easier if you go ahead and create all the slides so that there's no confusion as they're starting that's part of the process. And then if I'm number 4, I go to slide number 4. I add my one picture, my one word, and I have 3 minutes to do this. And then after everybody's done, as we go through, I get 20 seconds to explain why I chose the picture and the word that I did. So this is from a professional development session that we did, and we gave an article, and everybody was supposed to read it, and they were supposed to pick out the one word that they thought was the key from this one. What words stood out to them the most? And then as we went around the room, they explained why the word collaboration was the word that stood out to them the most, or organization, community, concise. And then in under a minute, everybody had gotten a chance to talk about that article and why it was important to them. So in about 5 minutes time, you can get through almost an entire class period. And the good thing about this is if this is your like exit ticket or your ticket out the door, if you asked for a few kids, if you ask kids at the end of the class, what stood out to you about today's class period? You're going to hear from those first couple of kids that raised their hand. But what about all the rest of the kids? What did they think about the class period today? What did they get from it? You don't ever know. If you do a ticket out the door, well, then you have all those things to read later on that day. If you do a thin slide, you hear from every student in the room because you just go around and they all talk about their slide and you do it right then and there. And it takes you about 5 minutes because they may take the full 3 minutes the first couple of times you create the slides, but eventually you can get that down to 2 minutes or maybe even a minute. And then you're going to take the other time for them to go around there. And you've got to keep them to the 20 seconds as they're talking. You've got to cut them off, but then they'll get to it. And as you do this over and over again, they're going to get into the habit. Or maybe you can do this as an intro activity. Okay, tell me what you already know about this topic. So you can use this. This is called an EduProtocol, if you've ever heard of those, by John Carippo, and I can't remember her name, so I'll have to look that up and add that into the slide, or add that in here. So they have a lot of different EduProtocols, and basically the idea behind this is you teach the technique and then you can use it with any content. So you teach them how to do thin slides, and then you can use this rep over and over and over again, no matter what you're talking about, no matter whether it was a video, no matter whether it was a short story, no matter it was a chapter of a novel, whether it was just today's class and you're doing a reflection. That's the idea behind it. So that's one way that I like to use Google Slides. This will work whether you're at home or whether you're face-to-face in class. Then there are some other ways that you can use Google Slide activities. All right. There are a lot of different templates on Slidesmania. If you're not familiar with Slidesmania, I urge you to go and check this out. So Google Slides doesn't have a whole lot of beautiful backgrounds for slide presentations. This presentation background is one that I got from Slidesmania. But they do have Slidesmania and SlidesGo are two places that I like to go to find different slides backgrounds. And they also have some great templates on there that have just recently been added. So you could have students engage in your content that you're talking about by doing an Instagram story. Or you can have them come up with a game to talk about the content that you've been teaching. There's a template for deal or no deal. You could have them do a conversation between two characters or two people from history in a talk to text template. There's a template for a virtual art gallery. There's a digital notebook template, and our science teachers have been knocking it out of the park with digital notebooks. There's a template, there's a couple of templates on Slidesmania that are already set up for you. There's a digital game board that is phenomenal. I have a middle school facts teacher who used to always have her students create a game board. They had to make a game. They did it on poster board. You know, they had the little markers and the dice, and they made the little cards out of their construction paper. And they had to do this about babysitting after they had their knowledge after they've learned everything they needed to know about how to take care of children. So now, like this past year, she gave them the option of making this into a digital game. And I think just about every single student made a digital babysitting game instead of doing that on construction paper. Okay, so at this point, if we were face-to-face or even if we were live virtually, I would ask you, which of the strategies that we've talked about so far are you likely to use? Which one of these appeals to you the most? And which one would you want to try out in your virtual or face-to-face class? Okay, so now let's talk about some of the things that did change when we started teaching online. Things that we would have never faced if we had just never heard of coronavirus or COVID-19. A year ago, probably very few of us knew anything about Zoom, and we definitely wouldn't have thought that Gen Z was going to stand for Generation Zoom. But I would say at this point, all of us would consider ourselves pretty much Zoom experts. Well, except for maybe the cat lawyer. He definitely doesn't qualify as a Zoom expert. Maybe now. He's probably learned a lot in the past couple of weeks. There is a slide here from Slidesmania that is Zoom etiquette, in case you still need something like this, because definitely we have to have some different etiquette for Zoom, and we need to make sure that our kids know all of this, because we have to teach those online procedures just like we teach our classroom procedures. But this was something I found recently that I really like, and it's virtual jobs. So you have a job for the person who is going to welcome everyone, because we know, despite having our Zoom norms, we're still going to have some people who are late. And it is nearly impossible if you are teaching online to keep up with the questions in the chat. So having somebody monitor the chat for you, that's a great way to keep everybody engaged, because if they're asking questions and you miss them, if somebody lets you know there's a question, then that can keep everyone engaged because their questions are getting answered. Like if I had a linker right now, then that person, if somebody's asking the question, that person can be posting that link and keeping people engaged and getting them the answers, especially if they came in late. And if we had an activity going on, if we were live instead of this being a recording, then the timekeeper could help me keep track of my time to make sure what was going on. And that would definitely be helpful because, sometimes I tend to get a little long-winded. And then a note keeper. I just think these are some great jobs that would be really helpful for people if they were, if you had people appointed and if you have your students joining virtually. I don't know about you guys, but I know that's one thing that we've had a little trouble with in our district. Our high school kids are not as likely to join our Zooms as our middle school and our junior high kids. So on this page, I have a link to an article that has some other ways to get students to engage during Zoom meetings. So not just, once you can get them attending, you can also have some ways to get them to be more actively involved. So breakout rooms are a great way to get them engaged. Virtual backgrounds can be more than just fun. You could have them all agree to find a different geographic location related to whatever content you're talking about if you're in a history class, moments in history if they're studying, or you could even get them to go with like a green or a red background for a discussion that you're having if you want to have them to agree or disagree. Live trivia, quiz, scavenger hunts. If you've got just 5 minutes, have them do a scavenger hunt to go find things around their house just to get them engaged and do that for a brain break kind of thing. So the last example I have of things that would be really engaging during Zoom meetings and just a lot of fun is this example from The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Check out this video with The Box of Lies with Chris Pratt. This is just a lot of fun. It's not going to be in any way related to teaching your content, but it would be a super good time and it would definitely build some engagement and help to just get the kids engaged and enjoying the Zoom class. Be a great way to just build in a little brain break. We're definitely getting close on time, so I'm not going to take time to play that here, but if you get a chance to go back and watch it or just look it up on YouTube, it would be super fun for you and your kids. Online discussion boards are another way to get students engaged and have them actively involved. You definitely need to think about creating some meaningful questions that are going to provoke thought. And another idea is to have an open discussion board for students to be able to ask questions about the material. So let them be able to start the question, not necessarily just you. That would also alleviate some of the strain on you if they can ask and answer their own questions among themselves instead of you having to be the one answering every question by email. That would probably be something that would be dependent on the age group of your students. I don't know that I would leave that option open for middle school students, but high school students should be able to handle that. This is a great idea that I would love to try, and if we had been live, that's probably what I would have done, but the waterfall chat. So during a live Zoom, you pose the question and give them some think time. And then you ask them all to go ahead and type their response in the chat, but not press send. So give them plenty of time, tell them that they're all going to press send at the same time, but not to do it yet. And then you have them go ahead and on the count of 3, tell them that they're all going to press enter. And then you go ahead and count, press enter, and everybody's response is going to come in at the same time, kind of like a waterfall. And then you can go ahead and read off their responses and use their names. And then you can ask students to unmute and elaborate if they want to. So I think that's a great way, because on those discussion boards, they figure out pretty quickly that even if you tell them that they can't see each other's responses until they've entered theirs, you figure out pretty quickly that if they just type in some random letters and hit enter, they'll be able to see what everybody else has said. And then they just have to go back and edit their response. So, a lot of them have figured out how to work the system to get around that. If they would only use their powers for good instead of evil, think how great they could be. But that's what they've done as a workaround. So this way, the waterfall chat during a live Zoom, they can't really do that. They have to think first, and they have to give their answer before they see what everybody else had to say. Okay, one more interactive question that I would have asked right here is, do you like teaching online? And just a thumbs up or a thumbs down, a quick little answer there. So when we talk about teaching online, one of the big things that goes along with that are streaming videos. So making your own videos, finding videos, and the engagement that goes along with the length of those videos. So pretty much at 0 to 3 minutes, you've got them all. They're still with you. 3 to 6 minutes, they're hanging with you. But once you get over that 6-minute mark, you start to lose a few of them. And once you go over the 9-minute mark, you lose about half of them. And if you go over 12 minutes, you've lost most of them. You're down to only 20% of your kids still hanging in there with you for 12 to 40 minutes. I don't know how many adults would hang in there with you for 40 minutes. Hopefully some of you are still there with me, because we're getting close to 40 minutes, I realize. But that's asking a lot. And Zoom fatigue is a real thing. Watching videos that are that long, that's tough. That's a real commitment. I don't know about you guys, but if I go to YouTube to learn how to do something, one of my deciding factors in choosing which one I'm going to watch when I have a choice is length. So we know teachers are putting in a lot of time and a lot of effort into making these videos. And I have a lot of teachers that are wanting to record everything that they do. They want to record their entire class. We switched to block classes this year. So we have 90-minute blocks. There's no way a student is going to watch that entire 90-minute video. We've got tools that will allow that. Screencastify is limiting teachers to 5 minutes, which coincides right here with that length of time that students are going to watch. Loom doesn't limit you. Loom will let you keep going. You could do that entire class. But I think a better option goes back to that very first slide that we talked about with the chunking material. That's a better option for teachers and for students. I have math teachers that want to record every problem and work every problem for them. But, maybe after that first problem, I've got it until you switch to a different type of problem. Maybe if you do like the first problem sets in one video and do the second problem sets in a different video, maybe I don't need to watch you work all of those first examples. Maybe I need to go to the second set of problems and watch those. Well, instead of making me try and fast forward, maybe I can just click on the second video set. And I realize kids are going to fast forward. That's not a problem for them. But if we chunk things, we can just make it a little easier. So looking at this graphic, we have the percentage of the percentage of video watched by students and the length of the video. So if we're talking about a 0 to 3 minute video, we've got all the kids willing to watch that. 3 to 6 minutes, they're still watching it. Once we get over that 6-minute mark, we've got a few less kids watching it. We don't lose a lot of them, but we lose a few. Once we get over the 9-minute mark, we drop down significantly. We're around the 50% mark. If we go over 12 minutes, we lose a lot of them. We drop down to 20% of our students that are still watching if we're in the 12 to 40 minute range. Now this is from 2014. So my guess is that might have decreased, that our numbers might not be this good anymore, because we've got a generation of kids that is used to TikTok videos. Shorter the better. And it's not just kids. I'm the same way. If I go to YouTube to watch something, to learn how to do something, the thing I look for is the shortest video. So it's not just the kids. We're all guilty of that. I'm willing to bet that some of you are getting a little bit of Zoom fatigue as well watching this video, because I'm getting close to the 40-minute mark as well. So we need to think about that as we're making videos for our students. I have teachers who don't want to use Screencastify because it limits them to 5 minutes. They want to use Loom because they can record their entire class. We switched to block classes this year. That means my teachers have 90-minute classes. I don't know too many students who are going to hang in there for 90-minute video. So we definitely need to think about that. Unlimited recording time does not equal our students' attention span. We also have teachers who have made a ton of videos this year. And I don't know about you, but I'm hoping that we will not need all those videos next year. So teachers are putting in hours worth of work that they may not need next year, at least not need in the same capacity. The thing is, we are always going to have students who are on homebound, or students who are absent, or students who go on vacation. But we could also use these videos for stations, flipped learning, or even just for our gen ed students. I don't know about you guys, but if I was in geometry class, and then I went to history class, and then I went to ELA, and then I went to practice after school, and then I got home to do my geometry homework, I did not remember what I thought I understood perfectly well in geometry class earlier that day. If I could have gone back and watched a video of just the highlights from class, or just my teacher working a couple of those problems, that would have been so helpful. So even those videos that they're doing now for online instruction could be extremely helpful to teachers and students next year, or whenever it is that we get back to our normal, whatever that means in the future. The thing about these videos is that teachers can talk faster, students can start and stop the videos as often as necessary. Even parents who are trying to help their students at home will have access to them. So videos are an amazing instructional tool that can serve so many different purposes and be so helpful. It's amazing if you can make your own videos. The students would really rather see you than a video that you found online of somebody else. But we all know that there are only 24 hours in the day, and at some point you have to clock out. So if you and your team need to divide them up, great, do that. If you need to pull some from YouTube, fine, do that. Do not think your videos have to be perfect. Done is better than perfect. So if what you need to do is make some mistakes and put that video on there, that's fine. Do not start over every time you misspeak. I haven't, you can tell that. Whenever you make a mistake, do you walk out of the room and walk back in and say, okay, I'm going to start over? You'd never get through a class period if you did that. You'd never get through your content if you did that. Done is better than perfect. And you just need to sometimes get through it and put it up there and move on. Something else that's changed is feedback and the way we do grades. Because really, when we're teaching online, feedback may be much more important than grades and maybe replaces grades. Because what we need is continuous feedback, clear communication with students so they know where they stand and what they need to work on. And the capability of using video or verbal feedback versus text feedback is such an instrumental piece. It's so helpful. I'm a real sarcastic person. And when I was grading essays, when I was an ELA teacher, students would sometimes think that the things that I wrote in the margin was sarcastic just because they knew me, when that was not what I meant at all. If I could have used voice recording or video feedback and they could have heard my tone of voice, they would have known what I meant when I was making those comments. So I think that is an amazing new addition and a great way for us to engage students in the process and help with the feedback and with the instruction. Mote is a great tool for that. It allows you to add voice comments to Google Docs, Slides, Sheets, and Classroom. And I've got a video here that's linked for you if you want to learn more about using Mote. Assessment has also changed. We've got to give kids ways to create. We've got to allow them to show what they know. Because if all we're trying to do is take our previous assessments and put them online, that's not really giving them a chance to show us what they know. Now, we know that kids have always found ways to cheat. And we know that putting our same old assessments online and letting them take them at home is just making that a whole lot easier. So instead, what we need to do is give students a chance to do or create something with the knowledge that they have. It goes back to that need for authentic learning. So I have one example that my son did last semester from his college class. He was in a sales class. My son is a business ag major, and in one of his classes, he had to pick an agricultural product that he was a sales rep for, and he told his teacher what the product was, and he had to call on a sales call and do a 15-minute sales call for that product. So that is a much more authentic type of assessment than any kind of standardized test would be. So that's the type of authentic learning that we need to be giving our students the chance to do. So at this point, I would ask you to draw or type 2 things that you've learned from this presentation today. I would like to thank you for joining me, and I would hope that you were able to come up with 2 things that you have learned from today's presentation. And finally, I would just like to say, if there's anything that I can do to help you in this process, feel free to reach out to me. And good luck with your online education and keeping students engaged.